What is up guys, Stu here. So today's review is for a film which I actually did have the chance to check out early. I had an advanced screening of this one a couple of weeks ago, but I ended up not going to it because it was like the day before it came out. So I was like, I'll just see it tomorrow. The day it comes out, I'll get a review out on time as usual. And then I didn't do that. I'm lazy, did other stuff, and so here we are like 2 weeks after release with the review of a film which I was supposed to get up early. But it's okay, we'll just forget that happened, we'll just move on with things. And that film was the latest King Kong film, Kong Skull Island, so let's talk about that shit. So the lead up of the whole marketing campaign for this one, it wasn't doing a huge amount to make me really excited for this one. I was interested to see a new take on King Kong. You know, it looked like it was going a different direction, which is interesting to me, but none of the trailers really stood out to me as particularly great, except for that final one, which was a lot better than the others, but it just seemed like a weird tone they were going for. I couldn't quite click in the trailers, and I was like, I don't think I'm really going to enjoy this, but I'll check it out anyway. So I went into it with very low expectations. Also, perhaps down to the fact that people that did see it were like, yeah, no, don't get excited for it, it's not that good. Which is why I'm all the more surprised to be standing here and saying I actually enjoyed this one. I had a good time. So Kong Skull Island, if you haven't heard about it, is basically a new telling of the King Kong story, which everyone knows at this point, and if you don't, who are you? What are you doing? Go and learn something, please. This one, in many ways, is kind of a simpler version of the King Kong story we know. They're just a bunch of people that go to Skull Island in search of things that they've never found before, and they find King Kong, who's a fuck-off, huge, massive, giant monkey man, and he's mental, and so obviously they're like, well, that's a bit weird, we probably shouldn't be messing with it, and shit goes to hell. Usual King Kong stuff, basically, and this one is directed by Jordan Vogt-Roberts? One of those two, not entirely sure which one it is though. The guy who directed Kings of Summer, which in my opinion is a very underrated little indie gem. But this one, they've given him a really good cast as well, who all give pretty solid performances overall. I guess the two leads of the cast are Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston. That just seems to be the way they're going with all the marketing and advertising. So let's call them the leads, and they're really solid in their roles. Working with some questionable character stuff here, which I'll get into in a bit, but they do a good job with what they're given. But Tom Hiddleston's a weird choice, and the main bit of casting in the film where I'm like, what the fuck is going on there? Who decided Tom Hiddleston was good for this role? Not good casting. To be honest, he was the worst part of the film from an acting performance side of things, because I don't know what it is about Tom Hiddleston. He's good in certain things, but he's one of those actors which I don't think is as versatile as he wants to be. So when he's doing action roles like this, I'm just like, no, not buying it. No, don't do this, Tom. Get the fuck out of here. He's meant to be this kind of British agent, I think, who's like badass. At one point, he wields a samurai sword and takes things down, which, I mean, that was cool. That was cool, I'll give him that. That was a cool scene. But he's got the Tom Hiddleston accent, and I'm just watching Tom Hiddleston be that character, and it does take me out of the film a lot. So his casting performance was perhaps the weakest of the lot. The rest of the cast is great. We got people like Samuel L. Jackson, who's always pretty solid in whatever he's in. But there's also John Goodman, who is always amazing, and I love seeing him whatever he's doing. He does a good job there. But a bunch of other people as well, including the kid from Me and Earl and a Dying Girl, who was great in that and seems to have graduated from dying girlfriends with cancer to a giant ape, which is fucking things up. So yeah, pretty versatile as far as acting options go there, I'd say. But I was actually quite interested to see how Jordan Vogt-Roberts would do with a film like Kong Skull Island, because it's a significantly bigger budget than the films he's previously done, and it's a very different film. I mean, Kings of Summer was a kind of coming-of-age indie drama, whereas this one is just sort of a big, fun, extravagant, ridiculous kaiju film. And I actually do think he does a really good job here. It's a lot more interesting a film from the direction side of things than I think a lot of people would have you believe, and than I think the trailers would have you believe. The first thing that struck out, and I think really worked about the direction of this film, is just how kind of fluid it is. It's filled with a lot of emotion. A lot of the camera movements and the shots that are put on display here are just very kinetic and enjoyable to watch. So that side of things is good. But what really stuck out to me, and I think is the thing that I like the most about this film, is I guess kind of the artistic vision behind it, and just the tone and the way they went about nailing this thing. And I know that's also for some people what put them off and just strikes them as a little bit odd, but I actually really enjoyed the way they went for a kind of Vietnam setting and style for the tone of this film. I mean, yeah, did we need to see a King Kong film done in the style of a Vietnam War film? Maybe not, maybe not. I don't think that was 100% what we needed in cinema right now, but I'm happy to say that it didn't really piss me off that it did happen, and I think they do kind of go for it, and so it comes off as quite effective in that manner. It may well have just been done so that they can use a Vietnam-style soundtrack, which, side note, is a wicked soundtrack, so I'm okay with that. And so that they can just shoot in Vietnam and it look pretty, and they can have references to Vietnam War and Vietnam films. Yeah, maybe it's all there just for the sake of having those things in there. But I just think from an aesthetic visual style, doing it that way lent a very interesting spin on this one, which makes it just a little bit more than just a really shut your brains off, eat some popcorn blockbuster, which I think a lot of people are expecting it and think it is. On the side of visuals as well, I also enjoy what was done with the kind of visual effects side of things here, because it is a very visual effects heavy film. And it is quite noticeable. I mean, the visual effects in this film aren't particularly photorealistic at certain points. It is quite aware that you're watching CGI, just because so many different weird, crazy, giant outlandish creatures are happening. It's obvious it's not real, but I wasn't expecting like photorealistic Planet of the Apes style CGI. And I think the visual style and tone that is created throughout by the direction and the writing means that the CGI that is in the film is kind of cartoony for a reason, and that makes it work a little bit more than it would do if it was in a film like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. That makes much sense. And when the giant creatures are throwing down, it is undeniably fucking awesome. Like, I don't know, maybe it's not your thing, but I don't know how you can sit through it and be like, oh, this is boring, I'm not having fun. Like, King Kong's fucking thrown down with an octopus at a certain point in this film. How's that not fucking awesome to you? That side of things I loved, and I think that's perhaps why I enjoyed the second half of this film a bit more than the first half, just because it kind of begins to click the tone of the thing, and it just has fun with itself. That sounds naughty. No. But yeah, it knows what it is, and it just becomes kind of a big, over-the-top, ridiculous fight film between giant monsters. And I am on board for that kind of stuff. I enjoy that. It's why I like films like Pacific Rim. Ridiculous film, but it's fucking fun because big things fighting. It's just always fun. There are certain things which are undeniably flaws here. The main one of those being the characters, which I think is the thing a lot of people are picking up on. But yeah, the characters are basically paper thin here. They really don't have much to them other than reasons for them being there. I mean, a couple of them do get attempts at backstories and hints at, which I don't think are completely butchered, but do feel a little bit like we don't need that if you're not going to go full hog and give us an actual 3D character here. But the film as a whole is structured and created and written and shot in such a way that I don't honestly believe that the characters being paper thin is that much of a flaw. Obviously, it would be a better film if it had better characters and was better written in that sense. But I don't necessarily think that the way the characters are dealt with in the film detracts too much. It doesn't annoy me or take me out of the film a huge amount. I also wasn't really a fan of the comedy in the film. I can't say I actually laughed out loud at many points in the film. There was like 2 points, I think, where I was like, huh, yeah, that's kind of funny. Okay, yeah, well done. It is enjoyable comedy. It's just not the sort of comedy which I'm laughing out loud to. Which also brings me on to another flaw with the film, and that is that there are points where it attempts to drop in kind of, I guess, deeper, more serious messages which don't necessarily work, particularly about that whole Vietnam War stuff. There are certain lines or moments in the film between characters where they'll say something which I think is just trying to be a very poignant comment about war. Thankfully, those moments are short and it just seems to kind of forget about them instantly and get on with it. But that in itself is a bit of a flaw as well. Like, it touches on some deeper issues and some more poignant messages that I think would have been nice to have seen made a bit more elaborate, and never really goes for them to the point where I can say it's a huge flaw in the film. But that in itself is a flaw because it's like, well, why the hell are they there then? We didn't need that. The film did not change with the inclusion of those deeper messages there. So that side of things was a little bit flaky there, as well as the comedy. But on the whole, the writing, the screenplay, the direction, everything did work for me in that it created a fun film which was entertaining, never was boring, and ended up just leaving me happy when I left the cinema. I'm not going to stand here and say it's a particularly great film. I can't even objectively say it's really good, but it was fun. It surprised me in that it had a tone which did end up clicking with me, as opposed to those weird trailers where it was sort of all over the place. Has some frankly stunning visuals. I mean, it's not as good as many of the other King Kong films we had. I still have a place in my heart for Peter Jackson's King Kong. I love that film. But I think I would happily watch Kong Skull Island again. It's a film with flaws, but those flaws never really ruin the experience for me. So I'm going to go ahead and give Kong Skull Island a very, very low, just scraping it 4 stars. But what about you guys? Have you seen Kong Skull Island yet? I know it's been out in a lot of places for a little while now. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I'd love to know. And as usual, if you like this review and you want to see me talk about more shit, go ahead and click subscribe. But until next time, stay beautiful, mother truckers.